Hello, Jai Hind, and a very happy Independence Day to you all. So today we are going to build this amazing Cold War fighter jet. That's the MiG-29A in the Slovak Air Force version, the MiG-29AS. And here you can see the beautiful box art with the Slovak Air Force markings. That's also a pretty cool version, and I'd love to build that someday, but this time I will be building an Indian Air Force version, and the kit is from Academy. So as we open the box, the first thing is this little red card which says check with part list before unsealing, and then it is followed by 1, 2 and 3 plastic bags with the sprues. Of course there's a fourth one with the clear parts, followed by the decal sheet and then the instruction sheet. Right, so the instruction sheet is a double foldable instruction sheet, all black and white, but very nicely printed with 20 steps. It's also got the sprue map, very detailed, and of course a single guide for the paint scheme, which is of course the Slovak Air Force paint scheme, as you can see here. Okay, so opening up the bags of sprues, here's the front section of the nose, followed by the cockpit. Here you can see the air-to-air armament, the pilot's ejection seat, so good detail in there as well, followed by this sprue which was there in the second sprue bag, the detail on the air intake vents, and of course the big drop tanks, centerline drop tank that the MiG-29 carries. It's also got these turbofan engine blades with some splendid detail, followed by the fuselage halves and the rudder. Very nice detail on the fuselage. Some splendid bit of electrical and plumbing details in the underside of the fuselage. Bit of detail on the wings. And here's a look at the crystal clear parts. Very nice, very well done. Right, so the build begins as usual with the cockpit, and here you can see me assembling the ejection seat, followed by the ejection handle, which was a nice touch to the ejection seat. And look at that, that detail in the cockpit is just splendid. Right, moving on to the nose section of the aircraft. I used the improvised grey-blue cockpit color that I created to paint the interiors inside the cockpit, and of course the cockpit parts as well, the cockpit floor, the instrument panel, and the seat as well. Here's a little bit of detailing of the seat with Fevicryl sap green that I'm spraying through the airbrush, followed by detailing of the switches in the cockpit, and followed by some detailing of the dials in the instrument panel. Here you can see me building some seat belt detail. This was not included in the kit, so I improvised on this, and I cut out pieces of masking tape and I began building up the seat belt. And there you can see how detailed the entire thing looks once the seat belts are in. Lovely detail in the instrument panel as well. Alright, moving on, the assembly of the middle section of the aircraft with the upper and lower fuselage halves that fixed together very nicely. And now something to concentrate here. So step number 4 in the instruction sheets shows you the assembly of the bulkheads of the landing gears, and it shows you that these bulkheads will basically go back and then they have to be pushed forward. So that's a very nice touch, because once you start assembling the landing gear bulkheads, you see that the assembly is pretty snug if you fit it exactly the way it is mentioned in the instructions. and you can see that plumbing detail also very clearly visible. Right, now the turbofan engine blades, it shows this extra part here, but it doesn't show you that you need to cut it off. And I can tell you that if you use it as is, there's no way you're going to fit the air intake assembly. So what I did was I cut the excess part out, and then I was able to assemble it. Now step number 8 is the assembly of the parachute housing. You have two options basically. You can either have it in the open parachute configuration or in the closed one. Of course, I will be going with the closed parachute housing configuration, which is the first one. Right, this is followed by the assembly of the exhaust rings, which is basically 3 parts for the rings, followed by the exhaust nozzle, which is the 4th part. So 4 parts in total to assemble the MiG-29 exhaust. Pretty simple. I then cut out the wings and began assembling it. So the upper and lower parts of the wings need to be assembled together. And once the assembly was complete, now it begins to look more like a MiG-29, albeit a MiG-29 without the nose and the cockpit. Alright, so I began with the masking of the canopy frame, and because this was a 48 scale model, the masking was pretty easy. I just masked off the edges of the canopy and also cut out wherever required. This was easy to do because the scale was quite big. Alright, so then began the painting phase, and I painted the entire aircraft in white and then masked off, and this masking took me almost like 3 to 4 hours because I had to paint the red paint on it. And a little bit of a history behind this paint scheme. So the Indian Air Force became the first ever Air Force, and India became the first ever country to take export models of the MiG-29 back in 1986. The 223 Squadron Tridents is the 3rd squadron that was equipped with the MiG-29s, and this aircraft came painted directly from the Soviet Union in this paint scheme. As you can see, the aircraft did not have the standard Indian Air Force markings. It only had the roundels on the nose and the squadron marking on the air intakes, and apart from that, the fin flash was missing and the underwing roundels were also missing. So this aircraft was basically employed in the aerobatics to impress the top brass and the public. I was lucky to have seen this aircraft perform in one of the air shows in Jodhpur, because that's where my dad was posted at that time, and that was the first ever time one could actually see MiG-29s performing the famous tailspin and the hammerhead maneuvers, wherein the pilot would fly straight in at high speed, roughly around 600 kilometers an hour, and right above where it reached the public and the top brass, the pilot would pitch the nose up, use the entire body of the aircraft as an air brake. The aircraft would point up 90 degrees vertical, and it would climb to above 300 or 400 meters above its current position, and the pilot would then shut off the engines and the aircraft would come to a standstill at 0 speed. At that speed, at the peak of the climb, the aircraft would either fall sideways, which is a usual stall, or it would fall on its nose, which is called the hammerhead maneuver, or it would fall straight back down on its tail, and that was called the tailspin maneuver, and that was a feat only the MiG-29 could perform. Used to be a hell of an impressive sight to see these jets perform these high standard aerobatics. Before that, the 223 Squadron used the MiG-23 MFs, and those were the air defense interceptors. But the MiG-29s were capable of achieving what the MiG-23s and MiG-21s could not in the air defense interceptor role. So a very, very capable aircraft. The MiG-29s were inducted into the Indian Air Force to counter the threat of the F-16s, which the United States had very generously supplied to Pakistan in the order of about 80 to 100 during that time. Of course, this was a very short-lived paint scheme, and it was removed in about 2 months of use, and this MiG-29 was then painted up in the usual gray scheme or Tipnis gray paint scheme that was prevalent on all the MiG-29s of the Indian Air Force thereon. So that completes this model. It's a great kit to work with, the Academy 148 scale, and I would recommend it for a beginner and advanced modeler alike. If you like this video, please do the good stuff like commenting and subscribing. I do like to interact with you folks in the comments, so I will reply to them. Thank you very much. Bye-bye and Jai Hind.